All right, everyone. Welcome. Made it to Thursday. And I don't have the music on. Scrambling right now. Hope everyone's doing okay. Happy Thursday. Mhm. Let's see here. Just a second. Music volume down because it's too loud. All right, there we go. All right. How's everyone doing? Oh, you can still see some of that over there. Hold on one moment. Ooh, one moment. Ricky, hold on. It's not showing up over here. Hold on. Hi, Ricky. Good to see you too. I'll have to bring up my YouTube so I can see. There we go. Whew. So how are you today? How's your Thursday? How's your week gone? I'm doing okay. What's the largest sequestering plant in the world? Yeah, it's gonna be, carbon capture. Yep. Yeah, I had to. YouTube only allows a very small amount of characters, specifically 200 or 100 characters, so I had to really shrink that down. Yeah, it'll be carbon capture, and this is the link we'll be going over here. Okay, good. I'm glad you like the title. I'm not as wild about carbon capture like this, but 'cause I'm not sure how well it compares to things like algae or just planting trees or something like that. I realize these are going to be necessary, at least as we attempt to keep humanity from going extinct, but yeah, it's interesting. There's lots of different technologies for this out there. Well, here, let's get things started then. And where are you from? I'm from Wisconsin. Oh no, what did I do? No. There we go. Yeah, I'm from Wisconsin, Central Standard Time. And I stream from England. Okay, and Italy on holidays. Yep, a lot of Europeans pop in here. A lot of Europeans. So good. Hopefully, how's Italy? Italy's been haven't they been having some COVID problems? Is everything okay over there for you? So on this channel, we cover the 3 C's: capitalism, climate change, COVID. I mean, they're all capitalism, but yeah, COVID's kind of a big thing to cover. I'm not covering any COVID today, actually. I'm covering pretty much everything but that. The regulations are that we must dine outside. That's it? Wow. Okay, well, that's definitely a good thing to do, dining outside. Well, good luck, and I hope you're gonna be safe and you don't catch anything while you're there. Wow. Well, cool. I was in Italy once. I was in when I was in the military, I was in Naples. Naples, Italy for a few days. I got to spend some time there. It was kind of neat to see there, but that was a long time ago. A long time ago. Over 20 years. That's probably 95, 96, somewhere in there. So it's I'm not quite on 30 years, right? Yeah, not quite 30 years yet. Yeah. You going there to see anything specific? Or just wandering around aimlessly? Gotta have some sort of a mission. I think when I was there, what did I buy? I bought, I think I bought some jewelry for my mother when I was there. I did most of my spending on my Mediterranean run while in the Navy in Greece, actually. Greece was amazing. You're vaccinated? Okay, cool. That's a good thing. Cool. Yeah, that's definitely a good thing. It's an advantage that we here in the global north have the advantage of getting easy access to vaccines. Just have to get more of these vaccines to the global south and to help reduce the spread of it and the damage done to it in the south. Yeah, pizza today. I'm staying for a few days. Have to be back in England. Oh, my money. Okay. All right. Just kind of a weekend trip. Few day trip. Okay, that's cool. That's basically what my time was too. How's the pizza? How different is the pizza? I've heard that the actual pizza is more like, isn't it more like lasagna? It's more of a deep dish thing than the stuff that we do here in America. I mean, if you're traditional, I suppose you're gonna maybe having the normal American style or whatever pizza as well. What are you having on your pizza? I'm pretty much an all meat guy. Pizza, but I'll throw on jalapenos, or I'll be like a barbecue chicken will be amazing, or a chicken Alfredo. I like chicken. Chicken. Pepperoni's awesome. Jalapenos are about the only vegetables I'll put on there willingly. Yeah. I can stand like supreme pizzas as long as they're like everything's chopped up really, pretty small, but if it's big, it's just too much for me. I've got a texture problem. Oh, you have Domino's in England? Oh, lots of toppings, very little bread. Oh, okay. Yeah, I like Domino's here in America too. Domino's is really, really good. I remember it used to be Pizza Hut, like here in America, and then when Domino's changed their recipe, that's kind of like the first time. I think that was the second time I tried them, and it was so much better. Domino's is kind of my favorite pizza place. On the rare occasion I get pizza somewhere. Yeah, it's really good. Cool. Different, lots of toppings, very little bread. Okay. All right. Interesting. Cool. Well, enjoy your time there in Italy. It's good to travel. It's nice being in Europe where you have the ability to travel. When I was in, actually following graduating from college, I went to Europe for 10 weeks. And I started in Prague. I spent like 5 weeks there. Then I went 3 weeks in Belarus, a week in Germany, and a week in Moscow. So once you're kind of already there, it's much easier to travel. Go see things and expand your worldview. Unlike someone like the United States, where we're very geographically isolated. Cool. All right, why don't we get started? We'll get through this. The world's largest plant capturing carbon from air starts in Iceland. Now on Kickstarter, I've backed a small. Oh God, this is I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 years ago. I backed a small Kickstarter that was doing something similar on a smaller scale. Neat idea. Giant. Look at this thing. Giant facility for capturing CO2 from air of Swiss Climeworks AG is placed on the roof of a waste incinerating plant in Hinwil, Switzerland, July 18th. Okay. It's good that they're stacking. I like stacking. Oh, and if you're not familiar with me, I have my own blog where I blog about politics. I should probably put that in here. And I also have my own policy site as well, of course. That environment is a large part of my policies. Huge part of it. It's broken down into 3 sections: philosophical foundations, global domestic policies, and then beyond poverty, war, and suffering. In case you get bored, need some light reading. All right, Copenhagen, September 8th. The world's largest plant that sucks carbon dioxide directly from the air and deposits it underground is due to start opening on Wednesday, the company behind the nascent green technology said. Swiss startup Climeworks AG, which specializes in capturing carbon dioxide directly from the air, has partnered with Icelandic carbon storage firm Carbfix to develop a plant that sucks out up to 4,000 tons of CO2 per year. Now, the question is, how much is that for the investment? That's the equivalent of the annual emissions from about 790 cars. Last year, global CO2 emissions totaled 31.5 billion tons, according to the International Energy Agency. That doesn't seem like a whole lot. 790 cars. Direct air capture is one of the few technologies extracting carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and is viewed by scientists as vital to limit global warming, blamed for causing more heat waves, wildfires, floods, and rising sea levels. The Orca plant, a reference to the Icelandic word for energy, consists of 8 large containers similar in looks to those used in the shipping industry, which employ high-tech filters and fans to extract carbon dioxide. Now, if these were put together in such a way that they were like the size of a shipping container and they were stackable or something like that, that would be pretty cool. The isolated carbon is then mixed with water and pumped deep underground, where it slowly turns into rock. Both technologies are powered by renewable energy sourced from a nearby geothermal power plant. Now, of course, we're using water as a part of this, which is at some point in some areas going to be scarce, although Iceland is surrounded by water, so that may not be such a big deal for them. So that's kind of a concern there too. Renewable energy powered is good. Direct air capture is still a fledgling and costly technology, but developers hope to drive down prices by scaling up as more companies and consumers look to reduce their carbon footprint. There are currently 15 direct air capture plants operating worldwide, capturing more than 9,000 tons of CO2 per year, according to the IEA. So 9,000 tons per year. And this one is doing 4,000 tons. Okay, so this one plant is doing not quite half of the total of carbon captured by carbon capture facilities globally. Get 9,000 tons out of 31.5 billion tons isn't a lot. Interesting. U.S. oil firm Occidental is currently developing the largest direct air capture facility to pull 1 million tons, per year of carbon dioxide from the open air near some of its Texas oil fields. Climeworks, which recently signed a 10-year carbon removal purchase agreement with major insurance firm Swiss Re, also offers a subscription service which allows consumers to pay for carbon removal through monthly payments. Okay, that's interesting, although here Occidental is developing the largest direct air capture facility to pull 1 million tons per year of carbon dioxide. Now that is huge. This is the scale we need to be thinking here. 1 million tons. 9,000 isn't anything, but 1 million tons per year. And when there's billions of tons, I mean, this is what we need to be thinking right here. This scale. You need to be building like hundreds, thousands of these at this scale. But of course, they're super expensive. Okay, so there's that one. Maybe we can find an article on this one. Let's find Occidental. Carbon capture. Is there something out there? Is there something out here on this? And Bloomberg. And let's see if they let me in. They do. Bite me. When is it? This is from January this year. Okay, 1 million isn't in here. But all right, here's an article on this if you want to read more about this. This can get you started on the Occidental one. Slide that over. All right, now we go over to here, algae. I like the idea of algae. Algae can be used for so many things. In a sense, like hemp, right? Carbon sequestration, oil, food, all sorts of things. All right, so algae might be a secret weapon to combating climate change. Now, this is from October of 2019. I know I've covered this before, but I wanted to cover this along with the carbon capture technology. As fires rage in the Amazon, people have latched onto the phrase that the Amazon is the lungs of the earth. President Emmanuel Macron of France warned that our house is burning. Celebrities from Leonardo DiCaprio to Vanessa Hudgens raised funds to support the Amazon, and the hashtag Pray for Amazon went viral. Our hearts collectively burst for the Amazon for two reasons. One was for the environmental and ancestral tragedy of watching an icon location burn, and the other for the fact that this 6 to 8 million square kilometers of forest plays a vital role in removing world heating carbon dioxide out of the air. The longer the fires burn, the less natural air filtration we'll have. And this is, it's not, you know, this is part of it, but also there's this negative feedback loop, right? So as the rainforest, Amazon rainforest is burning, it's putting carbon dioxide in the air, but it's also removing trees as well, which reduces our capacity to remove carbon dioxide in the air. So it kind of ends up adding to sort of the death spiral that we're going to be facing here with climate change. Not a good thing. But while the Amazon plays a vital role in global carbon absorption, and we should continue to try and save it, between 1994 and 2007, our oceans absorbed 34 gigatons of the world's carbon through algae, vegetation, and coral. In other words, the trees might not save us, but the oceans could. Yeah, and this is the other thing. When the Amazon was on fire, I was so distraught. I was even considering getting out of politics because of how fucked I thought we were. Now, don't get me wrong, the Amazon is important as a part of the lungs of our planet's ability to process carbon dioxide, but the oceans are much more important, much larger portion of that. The oceans and the algae and the phytoplankton, all that sort of stuff that's there, that truly is the lungs of our country. But the next, the second quote lungs would be the Amazon rainforest. But while climate change is happening, the temperature of the oceans is rising, the acidity of the oceans is rising, and it's starting to kill off this the plankton and algae and all that sort of stuff that's in there, and that truly is probably what will condemn our species to extinction. But anyhow, algae. But while the Amazon plays a vital role in global carbon absorption, our oceans absorb 34 gigatons of the world's carbon through algae, vegetation, and coral. In other words, the trees might not save us, but the oceans could. Solutions in the natural world will help right the warming wrongs of the human-made world, according to a new analysis by ecologist Thomas Crowther and colleagues at ETH Zurich, the Swiss university. There is enough room in the world's existing parks, forests, and abandoned land to plant 1.2 trillion additional trees. These forests would have the CO2 storage capacity to cancel out a decade of carbon dioxide emissions. But other scientists aren't as hopeful. They believe it could take hundreds of years before these new plants could scale back carbon dioxide levels to the level the study suggests. The optimal time to plant trees to address our current climate crisis was decades ago. Yeah, and this I do agree with. It takes time for those trees to grow and to have that level of effect on carbon dioxide enough to help turn those carbon dioxide levels back. It's a slow process. So yeah, decades ago. Other challenges with forestation as a climate change solution include the displacement of land used for farming, scientific and technological difficulties in measurement and monitoring, and limited public funding for carbon beneficial land management, according to a World Research Institute working paper. Yeah, and this comes down to saving humanity from extinction is not a priority for most countries. Definitely not for most companies, because there's no profit to be made in saving humanity from extinction, right? Which is basically what they're talking about here. But also for farming, we need to be shifting to vertical farming. That is a huge part of it. And also, of course, getting rid of cows as food. That is a huge, like 40% of our farmland is used for cows, and they only provide like 5% of our nutrition, something like that. It's so grossly incongruous. Planting as many trees as possible as quickly as possible could reduce 9 gigatons of carbon a year. Ooh, that's a lot, 9 gigatons. Considering there's 31 gigatons, or something like that. But it would also increase food prices by 80% by 2050. Yeah, and again, shifting to vertical farming would help reduce that. We need to shift to vertical farming anyhow, just to get rid of all that land wasted on farming. Trees alone would therefore not save us from the current crisis. We must look to our oceans for solutions that are more effective and scalable. Say hello to algae sequestration. Algae can be utilized in a number of ways to reduce carbon in the atmosphere. Other than it being the most efficient solution for storing carbon dioxide, it can be easily used in a variety of other sustainable and commercial products or materials, from tennis shoes to steel alternatives to veggie burgers. Yeah, and this is the big benefit of not just algae, but also of mushrooms. And you go to the lower down the ladder you go, the more efficient and the more useful these things are. Mushrooms and algae, if you look at my environmental policies, those are two things we should be using for food sources. And that all gives us the benefit of carbon sequestration, and also, of course, at least with mushrooms, you're composting. Algae as carbon sequestration. Algae, when used in conjunction with AI-powered bioreactors, is up to 400 times more efficient than a tree at removing CO2 from the atmosphere. That means while we are learning to reduce carbon emissions and augment our consumption patterns, we can start to make big reductions in atmospheric carbon when wielded correctly. To make big reductions in atmospheric carbon. When wielded correctly, it could make a city carbon negative without changing current production or consumption patterns of the city. Okay, so this very well may be true, but the key thing, and this is kind of the problem we would have with the psychology of humans, that if we had this giant ass algal reactor and it was going to offset all of the carbon, effectively for that city, people are like, well, we don't need to change anything then, right? Because it's offsetting everything, right? Well, no, we need to still reduce our carbon. We need to get rid of our gas cars and shift to electric, get mass transportation in, and all the other things, reduce our shift to sustainable energy, get rid of cows for food, right? We still need to do all the things that we need to do to reduce our carbon footprint and make us more efficient and more sustainable. So we can't let having a reactor like this, an algal reactor there, reducing our carbon footprint, keep us from understanding that and moving towards all that sort of a thing. Humans being what we are. Trees and algae sequester carbon dioxide naturally. Trees consume it as a part of their photosynthesis process by absorbing carbon into their trunks and roots and releasing oxygen back into the air. Algae replicates the same process but absorbs the carbon in the form of more algae. Algae can consume more carbon dioxide than trees because it can cover more surface area, grow faster, and be more easily controlled by bioreactors given its relative size. Bioreactors can contain large amounts of algae and optimize for its growth and related sequestration cycle in a way that is easier than trees and takes the overgrowth of algae. Second way that is easier than trees and takes the overgrowth of algae, dehydrates it, and ultimately puts it into use as fuel or biomass. Yeah, algae has so many uses. Oil, plastics, food. Is many, many ways to sequester the carbon that comes from algae. Algae is food. Rebecca White is one of the rising algaepreneurs in the space. She is a research scientist at Iwi, a nutrition company that runs algae farms in Texas and New Mexico. Their mission is to accelerate algae's potential as a solution for the food security of our planet. Population projections show that we will need a 70% increase in food supply by 2050 to feed the planet, and a recent United Nations report warns of a looming food crisis. Okay, so this is not really correct. Okay, so the big problem we have here within capitalism is that, here in the United States, we throw away 40% of our food every year. 40% of the food that we make gets just thrown away because of messed up policies. Now, this is also going to be and that amount of food that we throw away in the United States is enough to feed the entire starving population of the earth. Now, this is going to be a similar situation in other first world countries, right? Because our policies are going to be very similar towards food. So it's not that we need more food, it's just that we need the food to stop being thrown away and get to the people who need it. Like the United States, again, could feed the entire starving population of the earth. Why aren't we doing that? That's right. There's no money in doing the right thing, right? So it's not so much, even with right now, the one article we read a while ago said that if we just got rid of the inefficiencies in our policies and in our food production and transportation, all that sort of stuff, we could feed almost 10 billion people on this planet if we just got rid of the inefficiencies. That's not creating more farming, not doing anything else, just getting food, not wasting the food, and getting the food to the people who need it. It's not that we need more food, it's just we need to stop. We need to get the food to people who need it. That's all there is. Now, there is the other side of this, a looming food crisis, right? Which is coming through climate change. Now, this is a big deal. This, even with, the correcting our inefficiencies in the process, that might be able to compensate for some of this looming food crisis due to climate change. But we still need to fix our food process. Again, shifting to getting rid of cows as food, shifting to vertical farming on large scale, shifting to mushrooms, shifting to algae and that sort of thing as a way of increasing our food while decreasing our carbon footprint. Okay. I don't like it when they have pull quotes that I have to repeat. Iwi's 2 farms host 48 ponds, each about the size of a football field. They harvest the algae and turn it into algae oil, which is sold as supplements. They're working on turning the remaining proteins and carbohydrates into protein products with a commercially viable taste profile. Yeah, that's going to be kind of the thing there. The Novotel Hotel in Bangkok is operating an urban algae farm on its roof in partnership with algae startup Energaia, a producer of spirulina-based food and supplements. Founder of and CEO Saumil Shah started Energaia after first working for GE on an algae-based biofuel project in Thailand. He left GE to start a company using algae as fish food when he saw more immediate commercialization opportunities. He then moved to Bangkok and shifted to human food after his fish food facility was destroyed in the Thailand 2011 flood. Oh, yikes. The company raised a Series A funding of $3.65 million in 2019, fueling his vision to transform the spirulina market into a sustainable, accessible, and profitable solution for future resource scarcity caused by the world's reliance on water and land-intensive food production. Yeah, and this is exactly why vertical farming is needed, because it uses 10% of the land and 10% of the water. He's banking on spirulina becoming a staple food item that moves out of health food market and into the grocery store. One thing I've heard about spirulina is that some people don't like it so much that their body doesn't react so well to it. So for him, I would definitely move. I would do spirulina, but do other forms of algae as well too. You know, that way all of your food isn't in one basket, right? All of your eggs aren't in one basket. Algae as material. Dutch designers Eric Klarenbeek and Marta Droos use algae to create polymers that can be used in 3D printing as a replacement for plastic. In principle, we can make anything from this local algae polymer, from shampoo bottles to tableware or rubbish bins, garbage baskets, says the firm's project coordinator Johanna Wegelaar. Our goal is to ultimately turn an industrial manufacturing process, a source of pollution that contributes to global warming, into a way to subtract CO2 from the atmosphere. Using algae as a raw material would turn any mode of production into a way to help the environment. Yeah, so let's, this is a good thing. Now, one thing I do want to point out in my environmental policies, and this is, I talked about this earlier, right? That this can remove, if we had a big enough plant, it might be able to offset all of the carbon for a city, right? So we don't want people to just rest on their laurels and not do the further steps to reduce their footprint. But what we need to be aiming for is a regenerative, open source, circular economy as a part of that. So regenerative. So not just offsetting, not just being sustainable carbon-wise, but removing the carbon from the air so that we have a regenerative process, regenerative cities doing more and more for the planet. All right, there we go. Many other companies are already commercializing the output of algae fibers. One of the leading innovators is Bloom, a company that makes a foam from algae. This material is then used for shoes and surfboards whose soles are typically made from petroleum. Well, that's interesting. Some of their clients using the algae foam for shoes include Merrell, Adidas, and H&M. During the harvesting of algae, the Bloom technology also cleans the water and puts it back into the freshwater ecosystem. Oh, that's another thing, right? Algae and mushrooms are great at cleaning out, and other plants are great at filtering out contaminants in water, resulting in 225 bottles of filtered water returned to the environment and 21 balloons of CO2 kept from entering the atmosphere. Okay, what, for how much? Doesn't give us a comparison. Like is this just for like one shoe? This much is what is taken out, or what? Okay. Algae is fuel. Algae can also be used to produce biofuels, which are fuels derived directly from living matter. This means it can provide a more sustainable alternative to carbon-producing fossil fuels like petroleum. In fact, algae has been known to produce as much as 5,000 biofuel gallons from a single acre in 1 year. The government first explored algae as petroleum alternative during the energy crisis in the 1970s. It abandoned the project in the 1990s because they were unable to make it competitive with the pricing of petroleum. However, with the rising cost of oil and an imperative to find clean energy solutions, both oil companies such as Exxon and venture capitalists are pouring money into solving the algae as a fuel equation. Okay. While progress is being made, the industry recognizes it's a long journey to profitability. Algae oil extraction is a costly process and difficult to scale. Okay, the Energy Biosciences Institute, EBI, in Berkeley, projected that development of cost-competitive algae biofuel production will require long-term research, development, and demonstration. Why not start now? The challenges with algae. We need to consider alternative options that are planet effective, not just cost effective. Scaling algae for biofuel production is now without its challenges. For one, algae growth is rapid and has been historically hard to manage and optimize. This can be addressed with new technology like machine learning and AI that helps to manage the growth process in order to assure that growth happens through a managed and predictable cadence. Another limiting factor is the cost of implementation and the difficult road to profitability for many of these technologies. It's been historically hard to convince people to pay more for something they can pay less for, and companies like Exxon and Shell have experienced this head-on with their stunt-filled algae fuel concepts. However, the time to be cheap is over. We need to consider alternative options that are planet effective, not just cost effective. We need more investable capital in long-term got an editing right there. Long-term solutions that help to solve big problems. The current 5-year investment cycle for most VC-backed companies is too short for addressing major moonshot problems like climate change. To make these solutions work, we need investment options that allow for more gradual profit return and longer-term planning, thinking, and execution. So yeah, algae as a biofuel is probably not going to happen anytime soon. But in the meantime, these places can, while they're doing their research, they can use algae as other things, right? The food, the plastics and foam and stuff like that. What's next? Algae is an increasingly viable alternative for many costly climate-changing solutions. Next-generation companies are recognizing this opportunity, investing now, but it's also something that everyday people can consider as they look to reduce their impact on the environment. Every little bit helps. In addition to going out there and planting a tree, partaking in an ocean cleanup, or working for companies that are making progressive changes for our world, look to algae as a potential food source. Consider the purchase of products created with algae and support local and federal efforts to adopt algae methods of carbon absorption and sequestration. The world's problems can be solved by two things: collective action and human-first technology that improves upon dated ways of doing things. Everyone can be part of the change and support companies leading the way. Yeah, I like the idea of algae. I'll go back to my policies over here. So yeah, looking here, we're looking at how to change our entire food production process and how we need to be focusing. I'm going to go ahead and throw this in here so you guys have access to it. So for food, we need to start trying to concentrate on the most nutrient-dense food sources. We need to start making serious investments in research into food sources which are nutrient-dense and require little resources for the amount of food and nutrition it produces. So insects, mushrooms, algae, seaweed, honey, and hemp. Like, if you could get all these things together, put them into one product, you'd be nutrient-dense as hell, and you'd be recycling. Mushrooms recycles things, algae, seaweed pulls carbon from the the ocean, right? This right here, this is where we need to be concentrating on. And then doing this within the context of a vertical farm. Yeah, and get rid of factory farms, get rid of, cows as food. We can use hemp, mushrooms, pineapple. There's a whole bunch of other, and algae, right, to create these plastics and leathers and stuff that we need for various things, that we want for various things. All right, so that is algae. Good stuff, huh? All right, now we're going to go to Sydney, Australia. All right, and this is from Wednesday. This is from yesterday. Sydney suburb orders residents to paint roofs white and plant a tree in every garden to tackle climate change. The plans will attempt to tackle blistering summer temperatures in the city. Yeah, I think there's been some studies on this, painting like the roads white specifically, because roads are black and everywhere. Painting them white actually reduces... Oh, let's look at this up. Painting roads white. Oh, it doesn't. Turns out painting the streets white doesn't make cities cooler. Lies. Lies! Okay, so painting the roads. Okay, that kind of makes sense. So painting the roads white might not help because what they're saying here is it reflects it back to the people, which can actually make the air here hotter. So at least with Sydney, they want to do their roofs, which would reflect it back into the atmosphere. Okay. That's probably a little more effective. Sydney will ban dark roofs on new homes and ask residents to plant a tree in their garden to help tackle climate change and reduce blistering summer temperatures. As part of the plans, lighter colored roofs will be mandatory in new properties, and residential lots must be big enough to allow for a tree in every back garden. Oh, fuckers. Oh my God. I didn't think I was behind a paywall. Okay, we got through, thankfully. The new rules will initially apply to the suburb of Wilton in the southwest of the city, where developers have built a large number of dark-roofed homes. Sydney regularly suffers intense bursts of heat during the summer months, with temperatures rising as high as 50 degrees Celsius. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report released this month warned that Australia's land areas had warmed by 1.4 degrees Celsius since 2010. Okay, so again, I talk about this here in my stream. Part of the problem here is that all of our buildings and homes are above ground. They need to be at least under the ground. We need to start. It's like, okay, first, how many resources are wasted here by siting every single part of the house? How many resources are wasted on the roof when this could be a green roof? It could be just, this whole lot could just be under the ground, or at least covered with soil, and then have green on top, and you can even plant a tree there somewhere. It's a lot less wasted materials in the siding and the roofing, and also creates green space, and also it makes it much safer when it comes to environmental problems, and it also makes it much less expensive to cool because you have the insulation from the earth and stuff around you, so you're going to be less the temperature extremes are going to be much less inside the housing. This is just about capitalism. This is just about making money. This isn't what is efficient. Square houses are much more likely to be knocked down by and affected by winds and things of that nature. And this is not efficient. It's just what capitalism likes. So put them under the ground. Cities are generally much hotter than rural areas because concrete buildings and asphalt roads absorb heat. Buildings finished in white or lighter colors minimize solar absorption and reflect more light, keeping the temperatures inside buildings cooler. Rob Stokes, the Planning and Public Spaces Minister for the New South Wales region, said that dark roofs retained heat and raised ambient street temperatures, in turn leading to higher temperatures in the capital. We are determined to help keep the temperatures of our homes and streets cooler in the summer months, especially in Sydney's western and southwestern suburbs, he said. Well, another thing they could do is they could work on desertification. I mean, that would radically change the atmosphere there and probably extinct some critters because of, getting rid of the desert and the scrublands and stuff like that. But that would also help start planting trees and so on. We're determined to keep the temperature of our homes and streets cooler in the summer months, put them underground, especially in Sydney's western and southwest suburbs, he said. Mr. Stokes also noted that darker roofs also lead to higher electricity bills due to the need to cool down homes. The need to adapt and mitigate urban heat isn't a future challenge. It's already with us. Again, if you put them under the ground or at least cover them with earth, you can use a lot more of passive heating or passive cooling methods, which would greatly reduce the amount of electricity used in heating. You look at earth ships, right? I love earth ships. They use this sort of thing, passive cooling, passive heating, and a lot of problems can be saved and solved. Matthews Santamoris, professor of high performance architecture at the University of New South Wales, told the Sydney Morning Herald that cool roofs could decrease the energy consumption of uninsulated buildings in Western Sydney by up to 50%. Putting them under the ground would even save you even more. The Western Sydney Regional Organization of Councils also welcomed the move. President Barry Calvert said simply choosing a light-colored roof has no additional cost, delivers substantial benefits to household energy bills and temperatures in suburbs more broadly. Sydney is not the first city to put forward a cooling roof policy to reduce temperatures. In 2017, more than 3,000 rooftops in the city of Ahmedabad, a city in western India, where the mercury can rise as high as 50 degrees Celsius, were painted using white lime, using a special reflective coating. New York City has also painted some 9.2 million square meters of its roofs white in a bid to reduce the internal temperatures of the buildings. But the plans in Sydney have been drawn criticism from some experts. Stephen McMahon, New South Wales branch president of the Urban Development Institute of Australia, branded the cool roofs policy ill-conceived and unworkable. It will result in bureaucratically imposed blandness for new communities and will bring negligible improvement to thermal performance. Yeah, potentially, but putting them under the ground, or at least to start building earth scrapers going into the ground, is what we need to do, especially with climate change and all that sort of stuff going on. All right, there's that. Questions, comments, suggestions? Yeah, you're getting the links here twice. That's annoying. Okay, well, we'll just keep going. Going back to Iceland. I did Iceland for the carbon capture technology. Now we're going to Iceland for the 4-day work week. Iceland's trial of the 4-day working week has been so successful, now all the country is shifting to it. A trial of a 4-day working week in Iceland has turned out to be an overwhelming success, and many workers are now moving to shorter hours. What? Iceland has conducted a social experiment on the pros and cons of working a 4-day week. IFL Science reports the researchers behind the trial have now released their findings, and they are really interesting, to say the least. Not only did the workers involved report feeling less stressed, happier, and healthier, some workplaces have also become more productive. The experiment was a joint project by UK-based think tank Autonomy and the Association for Sustainability and Democracy, ALDA, in Iceland. The full report is available here. All right, I'll go ahead and throw that in here for you. The trial, in which workers were paid the same wages for shorter hours, took place between 2015 and 2019. Okay, 4 years, involving 2,500 people, over 1% of Iceland's entire working population. The participants, whose hours were cut back from 40 hours a week to 35 or 36 hours, worked in a range of environments, including shops, daycare centers, offices, social service providers, and hospitals, etc., and involved workers who worked a typical 9-to-5 day, as well as non-standard shift patterns. Okay, so this is just like a 5-hour reduction. 4 or 5 hour reduction. It's not the 8-hour reduction. It's not a full day. So they may be working 4 days, but 4 8-hour days, 4 9-hour days, or something like that. So not as amazing as I was hoping, but it's something at least. Throughout the experiment, researchers interviewed workers and gathered data on their well-being and changes to the workplace. Interestingly, the data showed that productivity remained the same or even improved in the majority of workplaces. And for the workers, the benefits were even more obvious. Their well-being showed clear increases across a range of indicators, from perceived stress and risk of burnout to work-life balance and even physical health. Yeah, most definitely. And the more free time we can give people, the better off they're going to be. This is why UBI is going to be important. That's why in my policies, right? I have us doing just that. There we go. So yeah, as we grow older, we reduce the number of hours per week. 30 plus, 32 hours, 40s, 24, 50s, 16, 60s, 8 hours. Although I do have the age of retirement at 50 hours. And this is for full-time pay, right? You work these hours and you get full-time pay. And this is, UBI is going to be a big part of, helping to make sure that you can survive, making, what you need to live. The majority of participants reported having more energy for other activities, such as socializing, exercising, and hobbies. Even more importantly, they spent more quality time with their families, and completing household chores was more easy for them, especially for single parents. Men also tended to take on more housework and domestic responsibilities, sharing labor more evenly. I work less. For me, it's like a gift from the heavens, and I like it a lot, one trial participant said in an interview. The fact that productivity was either maintained or improved in the majority of workplaces was put down by researchers to better morale at work. Morale has been good here and always has, but it got even better, one manager noted. The study shows that the world's largest ever trial of a shorter working week in the public sector was by all means an overwhelming success. It shows that the public sector is ripe for being a pioneer of shorter working weeks, and lessons can be learned from other governments. Lessons can be learned for other governments, added Will Strong, director of research at Autonomy. Yeah, so you combine, again, like I was saying, UBI with shorter working weeks and a lot more happier people. A lot less violence, a lot less crime. In the wake of the apparent success of the trial, unions managed to renegotiate working patterns, and now 86% of Iceland's workforce has moved to a shorter working week. Oh my God. And this is the power of having a massive amounts of unions present. That's just insane. 86% of Iceland's workforce has moved to a shorter working week. That's huge. The Icelandic shorter working week journey tells us that not only is it possible to work less in modern times, but that progressive change is possible too. Gudmundur D. Haraldsson, a researcher at Algae, underlined in a statement, While Iceland is known for its socially progressive initiatives, other countries are also pushing towards a shorter working week. Similar trials are now being conducted around the world, including in Spain and New Zealand. Even Japan, a country with a notorious intense attitude towards work, is now encouraging workplaces to let employees choose to work 4 days a week instead of the typical 5. Now, yeah, the key thing here is if they do 4 weeks, then it needs to reduce the hours by quite a bit. 4 or 5 hours isn't huge, but it is something. All right, there you go. That is Iceland and their 4-day work week. Questions, comments, suggestions? Anything, anybody? No, it's quiet. It's been quiet. All right, this is from The Guardian. This is from September 1st. So it's last week or so. Right, 21, yep. Air pollution is slashing years off the lives of billions, report finds. Dirty air is a far greater killer than smoking, car crashes, or HIV/AIDS, with coal burning the leading cause. Yeah, we had an article. Let me go ahead and find this for you. That basically says that, and it's in my environmental policies too. Let's says that 8.7 million people die per year due to climate change. That's way back here. I might have to go to my policies. All right, let's go to my policies over here. There you go. Throw that in here. It's a really great read. Not only does capitalism kill 20 million people just by virtue of, not having health care or food or all that sort of, or vaccines globally, but another 8.7 million die just because of the harms of pollution. So that's 30 million people die a year due to pollution. There we go. Nope, over here. Here we go. All right. Now, I've talked about some of the techniques of dealing with that, right? Carbon capture, algae, trees, right? Shifting to sustainable energy, mass transportation, so on. Air pollution is cutting shorter the lives of billions of people by up to 6 years, according to a new report, making it a far greater killer than smoking, car crashes, or HIV/AIDS. Coal burning is the principal culprit, the researchers said, and India is worst infected, with the average citizen dying 6 years early. China has slashed air pollution in the last 7 years, but dirty air is still cutting 2.6 years from its people's lifespan. Okay, so as a note to this, coal, right? Where the hell's coal? Okay, they just said coal. Where the hell's coal? Oh my god. Rain. There you go. Oh my god. All right, so coal. So coal burning is the principal culprit. If you read the New Human Rights Movement and you go to the appendix of the New Human Rights Movement, but if you have not read this book, read this book. It basically say for each coal power plant, we could fit in 9 geothermal plants, which is sustainable and baseload energy. So we need to be getting rid of coal and replacing it with geothermal as much as possible. Now, of course, that is expensive in the drilling aspect. And it needs to be closed loop geothermal, not the fracking sort, which is going to be a problem. You replace coal burning with geothermal, or if you have access to the ocean, then you want to do tidal. Tidal and geothermal is what we need to be doing. Get rid of this fucking coal bullshit. Fossil fuel burning is causing air pollution and the climate crisis, but nations have much greater power to cut dirty air within their own borders. The climate crisis is now also adding air pollution by driving wildfires, completing a vicious cycle, the scientist says. That's exactly right. It becomes this sort of a death spiral that we are caught in. And we have to act drastically to help stem the tide of that death spiral. The team said recent events had illustrated the different futures possible depending on whether governments act or not. Coronavirus lockdowns cut pollution, revealing the Himalayas to some Indian city dwellers, while the wildfires in the western United States caused serious pollution on the other side of the continent in New York City. Air pollution is the greatest external threat to human health on the planet, and that is not widely recognized, or not recognized with the force and vigor that one might expect, said Professor Michael Greenstone at the University of Chicago. Greenstone and colleagues developed the Air Quality Life Index, which converts air pollution levels into their impact on life expectancy. Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah, and again, this is much like, coronavirus. If people can't see it, if it doesn't have a direct impact on their life and it's obvious, they just don't have a fucking clue. And pollution, of course, is one of those things, right? It's a silent killer. Much like coronavirus. So air pollution shortens lives more than any other external cause. Air pollution, 2.2 years. Smoking, 1.92. Alcohol, 0.77. Unsafe water, 0.59. Road injuries. Malaria, 0.28. HIV, 0.3. War and terrorism, 0.2. The average global citizen loses 2.2 years of life with today's levels of air pollution, and if nothing changes, that adds up to 17 billion lost years, Greenstone said. What else on the planet is causing people to lose 17 billion years of life? Well, that's just a whacked out number there. Holy crap. Furthermore, we're not just letting it happen, we're actually causing it, he said. The most striking thing is that there are big countries here where effectively a combination of the government and societal norms are choosing to allow people to live really dramatically shorter and sicker lives. He said switching to cleaner energy and enforcing air quality measures on existing power plants have cut pollution in many countries. Yeah, and this is exactly what we need to be doing. And charging, and that's what policies do, shift to geothermal and tidal for base load power, and then we can even get into. We read an article on Tuesday talking about wireless energy transmission. So specifically, as I've talked here, you've got power satellites, giant satellites, above this, in orbit, which absorb, which have solar panels on them, and then they beam the energy to the planet or anywhere else in space, right? That's the sort of things we need to be concentrating on and shifting over to so we can get rid of all this fucking pollution. The report estimated the number of additional years of life people would gain if air pollution levels in their country were reduced to World Health Organization guidelines. In India, the figure is 5.9 years. In the north of the country, 480 million people breathe pollution. That is 10 times higher than anywhere else in the world, the scientist said. Cutting pollution would add 5.5 years in Bangladesh and Nepal and 3.9 years in Pakistan. Yeah, and there was a report here. New York, Gaming Mind found this for me when I couldn't find it. New York, right? Oh, it's right here, right? If I remember this correctly. Oh yeah, here we go. Do I have the quote here? Yeah, so basically, if you shift to sustainable energy, get rid of all of that pollution, you will pay back that shift to sustainable energy in about 10 years just by virtue of the healthcare savings alone, right? So if you're worried about healthcare costs, reduce pollution, that will greatly reduce healthcare costs. It'll increase quality of life. Everyone will be happier, and all that sort of thing. Just the sheer biopsychosocial cost, the biopsychosocial harms of pollution are just devastating. So, and we can recoup all that by just shifting to sustainable energy. China began a war against pollution in 2013 and has reduced levels by 29%. This is adding an average of 1.5 years onto lives, assuming the cuts are sustained. But scientists said, and shows rapid action is possible. Coal is the source of the problem in most parts of the world, said Greenstone. If these health costs were embedded in prices, coal would be uncompetitive in almost parts of the world. Yeah, that's exactly right. There was a study done on this sort of a thing that if you took the negative externalities of most businesses, especially fossil fuels, these businesses, could not exist. They would be run out of business because they could not afford to operate because they have to pay for the negative externalities, the health harms, the quality of life harms of burning coal, and so on and so forth. And those are the things that currently under capitalism that these companies and many other companies are not being paid for, or not having to pay for. They're not paying for their pollution. They're not paying for the healthcare harms and the quality of life harms that doing business does to the people. And that's much of what my policies say we need to do. We need to make sure they pay for that. And also, well, there's more to it than that. Fossil gas is significantly less polluting than coal, and Japan said in June that it would offer $10 billion in aid for energy decarbonization projects in Southeast Asia, including gas power stations. But gas burning still drives global heating, and Christiana Figueres, former UN climate chief, said on Sunday, "Let's be clear, gas is not an alternative to coal, nor is it a transition fuel." True statement. Investments in new gas must stop immediately if carbon neutrality is to be reached by 2050. Exactly. Again, especially in Asia, geothermal, tidal. That's where it needs to be. Those two things. That's where we need to be for base load energy. Then we can use solar and wind and other forms of energy production to help support that, especially with batteries, right? The AQLI report is based on research comparing the death rates of people living in more and less polluted places, with heart and lung problems being the largest source of early deaths. The analysis is based on small particle pollution, but is likely to include the effects of other air pollutants, as these all tend to be high in the same locations. The estimates of air pollution around the world were derived from satellite data at 3.7 mile, 6 kilometer resolution. The picture on the story was changed on September 1st. Okay, blah, blah. Okay, so there you go. This I'll be definitely adding to my my policies. This is important for people to know and understand. Questions, comments, suggestions? Anybody? So quiet. So quiet. All right, next one. This one is pretty. Now we're getting out of the climate environment and stuff like that, and now we're getting into some stuff I've had stored up for quite a while and haven't hit. So yeah, you can see here I've got a whole bunch of links. Some of it's research, some of it's stuff I wanted to go over, but yeah, here we go. An algorithm has created every possible musical melody, so no one can ever sue for copyright infringement. I would love to see this go to court. Please, dear God, have this go to court. New music is no longer a thing thanks to a pair of lawyers who created an algorithm to write every single musical melody that can possibly exist. Rather than claiming all music as their personal property, however, the duo have released their entire catalog of tunes into the public domain in the hope that this will bring an end to copyright lawsuits. Lawyer, musician, and programmer Damian Real came up with the idea after realizing that all singer-songwriters are essentially walking a melodic minefield, because there are only a finite number of melodies that can exist. As such, with each new song that gets written, the chances of creating something genuinely unique decreases, and the possibility of writing a melody that has already been recorded by someone else increases. In a recent TEDx talk, Real explains that this wouldn't be a problem if it weren't for the ridiculous nature of copyright laws. Amen. Which state that a piece of music becomes copyrighted the moment it is recorded. Even worse, it is possible to be sued for subconscious infringement, whereby an artist may have to pay a settlement to another artist, even if they claim to have never heard the song that they are accused of copying. Oh my god, that's Minority Report bullshit. Real states numerous such cases, revealing how George Harrison was found guilty of subconscious infringement after the chorus to his song My Sweet Lord was deemed to be too similar to a track called He's So Fine by the Chiffons. In another example, Radiohead were forced to name a group called the Hollies as co-writers of their song Creep, which apparently included a melody that also appears in one of the later band's songs. Yikes, right? Maybe we'll watch this. To try and bring an end to such cases, Real teamed up with Noah Rubin to create an algorithm that could produce every 12-note melody that has ever been written or can ever be written using one octave of musical notes. The algorithm uses the same brute force technique that hackers use when attempting to steal passwords by essentially generating every possible combination of characters. A total of 68 billion melodies were generated, which are now available at allthemusic.info. I really need to take a look at this. This is super cool. The pair argue that the algorithm highlights how musical melodies are essentially just numbers arranged in a particular order, and that since numbers can't be copyrighted, music should also not be constrained by infringement laws. No song is new. Noah and I have exhausted the data set, explains Real. Noah and I have made all the music to be able to allow future songwriters to make all of their music. And this is, when you get into education policy, right? Math, music is math. Music is physics, right? And there's a way, I mean, you can create an interdisciplinary class based off this very thing, right? Music is math, and it's physics and all sorts of things, right? And that's it. That's it. Let's take a look at his TEDx talk. Turn off the music. Okay, 17-minute TEDx. Let's go ahead and do this, since it is super fucking quiet today. Yeah, let's take a look at this. This is going to be pretty interesting. All right, here we go.
I'm going to tell you a true story, but instead of the name of the protagonist, I'm going to make you think about your favorite artist. Think about your favorite musician. And think about your favorite song by that musician. Think about them bringing that song from nothing to something into your ears and bringing you so much joy. Now think about your favorite musician getting sued, and that lawyer saying, I represent this group, I think you heard their song, and then you wrote your song, you violated their copyright. And imagine your musician saying, no, that's not true. I don't think I've ever heard that song, but even if I did, I certainly wasn't thinking about them when I made my song. Imagine the case going to trial and a judge saying, you know, I think I believe you, musician. I don't think you consciously copied that group, but what I think did happen is you subconsciously copied them. You violated the copyright, and you have to pay them a lot of money. Think about whether that's fair. Think about whether that's just. Now, this actually happened to George Harrison, the lead guitarist of the Beatles, and the group was the Chiffons, who's had a song, He's So Fine, oh, so fine. And George Harrison had a song, My Sweet Lord, oh, sweet Lord. But what neither George Harrison nor the Chiffons nor the judge, really nor anybody else had considered, is maybe since the beginning of time, the number of melodies is remarkably finite. Maybe there are only so many melodies in this world, and the chiffons, when they picked their melody, plucked it from that already existing finite melodic data set. And George Harrison happened to have plucked the same melody from that same finite melodic data set. Now, this is a different way of thinking about music in a way that judges and lawyers haven't thought about, nor have musicians, because when those groups have thought about musicians, they think about them drawing from their own creative wellspring, bringing from nothing something into the world. They have a blank page upon which they can put their creativity. But that's actually not true. As George Harrison realized, you have to avoid every song that's ever been written, because if you don't avoid those songs, you get sued. If you're lucky, you pluck one of those already existing melodies that hasn't been taken. If you're unlucky, you pluck a melody that's already been taken. Whether you've heard that song or not, maybe you've never heard it before. Now, if that happens, if you're lucky, you have a co-songwriter, somebody else says, you know that new song? Sounds a lot like that old song. You say, oh gosh, thank goodness. And you change it before it goes out the door. Now, if you're unlucky, you don't have somebody telling you that. You release it out in the world, the group hears your song, and they sue you for a song maybe that you've never heard before in your life. You've just stepped on a melodic landmine. And the thing is, this is the world before my colleague, Noah and Ruben and I have started our project. The world now looks like this. We've filled in every melody that's ever existed and ever can exist. Every step is going to be a melodic landmine. And ironically, this is actually trying to help songwriters. Let me tell you how. I'm a lawyer, and I've been a lawyer since 2002. I've litigated copyright cases. I've taught law school copyright cases. I'm also a musician. I have a bachelor's degree in music. I'm a performer. I'm a recording artist, and I also produce records. I'm also a technologist. I've been coding since 1985, for the web since 95. I've done cybersecurity, and I also currently design software. So that puts me right in the middle of a Venn diagram that gives me a few insights that if I were in any one of those areas, I might not have had. And my colleague, Noah Rubin, who is my colleague on this project, he's, in addition to being one of the smartest people I've ever known, he's also a musician, and he's also one of the most brilliant programmers I've known. And between our work, we came to a realization that you may have had, saying, you know that new song, that sounds a lot like this other old song. And there's a reason for that. We've discovered that there is only so many melodies. There are only so many notes that can be arranged in so many ways. And that's different than, say, visual art, where there are an infinite number of brushstrokes and an infinite number of colors and an infinite number of subjects that to accidentally do them is very difficult. Similarly with language, the English language has 117,000 words in it. So the odds of accidentally writing the same paragraph are next to zero. In contrast, music doesn't have 117,000 words. Music has 8 notes. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And every popular melody that's ever existed and ever can exist is those 8 notes. Now, it's remarkably small. And I worked in cybersecurity, and I know if I wanted to attack your password and hack your password, one way to do it is to use a computer to really quickly say, AAA, no, AAB, AAC, and to keep running until it hits your password. That's called brute forcing a password. So I thought, you know, what if you could brute force melodies? What if you could say, do-do-do-do, do-do-do-re, do-do-do-mi, do-do-do-fa, and then exhaust every melody that's ever been. And the way the computers read music is called MIDI. And in MIDI, it looks like this, do-do-do-do, do-do-do-re, do-do-do-mi. So I approached my colleague Noah. I said, Noah, can you write an algorithm to be able to march through every melody that's ever existed and ever can exist? He said, yeah, I could do that. So at a rate of 300,000 melodies per second, he wrote a program to write to disk every melody that's ever existed and ever can exist. And in my hand right now is every melody that's ever existed and ever can exist. And the thing is, to be copyrighted, you don't have to do anything formal. As soon as it's written to a fixed, tangible medium, this hard drive, it's copyrighted automatically. Now, this leaves copyright law with a very interesting question. Because you think about the world before, and songwriters had to avoid every song that's ever been written and read. Noah and I have exhausted the entire melodic copyright. So if you superimpose the songs that have been written and read with the songs that haven't yet been written, you have an interesting question. Have we infringed every melody that's ever been? And in the future, every songwriter that writes in the green spots, have they infringed us? Now, you might think at this point, are you some sort of copyright troll that's trying to take over the world? And I would say, no, I am not. Absolutely not. In fact, the opposite is true. Noah and I are songwriters ourselves. We want to make the world better for songwriters. So what we've done is we're taking everything and putting it in the public domain. We're trying to keep space open for songwriters to be able to make music. And the thing is, we're not focused on lyrics. We're not focused on recordings. We're focused on melodies. And the thing is, we're running out of melodies that we can use. The copyright system is broken, and it needs updating. Some of the insights that we received as part of our work is that melodies to a computer are just numbers. Because those melodies have existed since the beginning of time, and we're only just discovering them. So the melody, do, re, mi, re, do, to a computer is literally 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. So really the number 1, 2, 3, 2, 1 is just a number. It's just math that's been existing since the beginning of time. And under the copyright laws, numbers are facts. And under copyright law, facts either have thin copyright, almost no copyright, or no copyright at all. So maybe if these numbers have existed since the beginning of time and we're just plucking them out, maybe melodies are just math, which is just facts, which maybe are not copyrightable. Maybe if somebody is suing over a melody alone, not lyrics, not recordings, but just the melody alone, maybe those cases go away. Maybe they get dismissed. Now, you might say, well, what constitutes a melody? And we were initially going to take the entire piano keyboard and be able to do the entire keyboard. But we thought, let's focus on the vocal range, which is actually 2 octaves. And then we thought, no, actually, we're thinking about pop music, which is the only thing that makes money that people sue over. Pop music doesn't go 2 octaves. It goes a single octave. So that's what we landed on. Eight notes. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And then on the minor side, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, in the natural minor. And written in MIDI, it looks like this, both on the major side and the minor side. So now we have our 8 up. Now you might say, okay, how many notes constitutes a melody? So we looked at musicologists, and musicologists have debated what is a motif, a short melody, versus a longer melody. And so the number we landed on was 12 notes. And then we superimposed that number with songs that have either been litigated or threatened to be litigated. So for example, the Chiffons had He's So Fine, Oh So Fine, versus My Sweet Lord, Oh Sweet Lord. 8 notes. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. That's so close. Oh, I won't back down. No, I won't back down. Verses. Won't you stay with me? 'Cause you're all I need. 10 notes. Doot, 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 doot. Versus Katy Perry's doot, 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 doot. Last 2 notes are different. The jury didn't care. $2.8 million. So every song within that is within our parameters of 8 notes up, major and minor, and 12 notes across. So what you see in red is every melody, every popular melody that's ever existed and ever can exist. So all Noah and I had to do is to be able to exhaust that remarkably finite, remarkably small data set. There aren't that many of them. 8 up, 12 across. So you might say, Damien, songs are more than just melodies. There's chords, too. And I would totally agree with you, because it turns out that that's even easier. In 2017, Peter Berkhamsher exhausted every chord. You can download it today in GitHub. We're instead focused on, not on lyrics, not on recordings. We're focused on melodies. And the thing is, we're running out. Because the song isn't just a single melody, but there are many parts to a song. And each part of that song can have many motifs and many melodies within it. So each song can have up to 10 melodies and motifs. So SoundCloud, which is a way that musicians can upload to this website and distribute their work, SoundCloud currently has 200 million songs, and they're adding it at 50 million songs per year. So in 5 years, that's going to be 300 million songs. And if there's 10 melodies per song, that's 3 billion with a B songs that keep increasing exponentially. And the number of open spaces is shrinking exponentially, because every basement musician is recording, and they're uploading it to YouTube. They're uploading it to Spotify. They're uploading it to SoundCloud. And they are, more so than ever in human history, they are exhausting the entire mathematical data set. They are exhausting the open spaces till there's not going to be any more left. What Noah and I have done is we're trying to preserve those spots that are left. We're trying to be able to take those green spots, put them in the public domain, so that other people can be able to make them, because we're running out. Now the thing is, we're just getting started, because if you go to our website, allthemusic.info, you can not only download all the music we've made, which is a lot, you can also download the program that we used, and we're giving away the code for free, so you can expand upon our work. Something I didn't tell you is that those 8 notes that we did, as we speak right now, we've expanded that to 12 notes. So instead of just the white notes, now we've got the black notes too. So we're covering jazz, we're covering classical music. And we think it's only a matter of time before somebody's going to expand that to do the entire piano keyboard. And take our 12 notes and expand it to 100 with every rhythmic variation and every chordal variation until our remarkably finite mathematical data set gets further exhausted. This is going to happen. And the thing is, how is the law going to respond? Because the thing is, we're not focused on somebody copying a previous person's melody. We're focused instead on somebody accidentally copying a song that they either have heard and forgotten about or have never heard before in their lives. And the chance of landing in an open spot is remarkably small, and it's shrinking every day. And the thing is, the odds of you as a songwriter getting sued are remarkably high. And if you get sued, you're going to want to think about what a judge or a jury is going to think about. And the judge or jury is going to think about two questions. The first question a judge or jury is going to think about is that previous songwriter's copyright valid? Do they even have a copyright in that previous song? Second question is, did they infringe? Did you infringe their copyright? So to the first question, maybe the answer to that is no. Because if they're suing just over the melody, maybe that melody has existed since the beginning of time. Maybe there are only so many notes that are math that are not copyrightable. To that second question, did you infringe, there are two sub-questions. The first question is, did you access, did you hear that previous song? And if so, are those two songs substantially similar? Now that first question, did you access or hear that previous song? That's got a lot of problems. It's really problematic. And the reason for that is there are only a few cases where access is crystal clear. For example, John Fogerty was alleged to have infringed John Fogerty when he was part of Creedence. So clearly John Fogerty had access to John Fogerty's songs. Okay? On the opposite end of the spectrum, on no access, what if a baby were to sing into their toy? And again, as soon as the toy recorder happens, it's copyrighted automatically. It's a fixed, tangible medium. So if a baby starts singing da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, and a year later, Taylor Swift sings, I stay up too late, got nothing in my brain. Clearly, Taylor Swift has not infringed that baby, because Taylor Swift has not heard that baby's recording, okay? Clear case of no access. But the thing is, almost none of the cases are that clear. What if there's a question mark as to whether the second person heard it or not? Maybe they heard it, maybe they didn't. Maybe they heard it and forgot it. Maybe they subconsciously infringed. These are all what the law calls fact questions. And the thing is, almost every copyright case that comes out is a fact question. Almost never is it as clear as John Fogerty or as clear as Taylor Swift. Almost every case is that middle section, that fact question. And the hard part about fact questions is they're notoriously hard to resolve at an early stage in the case. Because when you think about a lifespan of a lawsuit, it starts out as a cease and desist letter. You need to pay me or I'll sue you. If you don't pay, I sue you. It goes forward and it's going to take years. And the thing about fact questions, they don't get resolved until the end of that process. That's what happened to George Harrison when at the end, the judge, after trial, the judge said, I think you subconsciously infringed. That happened after trial. These days, to be able to go to trial costs up to $2 million in legal fees. That's lawyer fees that you have to pay whether you win or lose. You have to pay those $2 million. And then on top of that, you're faced with the prospect of rolling the dice and thinking that maybe you have to pay millions of dollars on top of that to the other songwriter. So if you're a songwriter who has never heard a melody before, but you are approached by somebody saying, hey, I think you stole my song, what are you going to do? Sam Smith was approached by Tom Petty. Tom Petty said, hey, my song won't back down. Sounds like your Stay With Me. Sam Smith reportedly responded, hey, man, I've never heard your song before. That was written before I was born. But if I was in Sam Smith's position, I would look at this long row ahead of me and the prospect at the end of a judge saying, I think you subliminally infringed. So what are you going to do? It's not surprising that Sam Smith made Tom Petty a co-songwriter, giving Tom Petty a lot of his songwriting royalties. Radiohead had a song, and I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo. The Hollies said, hey, that sounds like our song. They made them co-songwriters. Lana Del Rey ironically had a song that sounds like Creep. Offered to make them co-songwriters, reportedly. Katy Perry had a song that she testified, and all of her co-songwriters testified, I've never heard that previous song before in my life. And the other side didn't dispute it. They say, we have no evidence that they actually heard the song, but we did have 3-point-some million YouTube views, so they must have heard it. A jury agreed with them, and Katy Perry was on the hook for $2.8 million. Now, if you are an accused songwriter who's never heard the song before, that is an untenable position. How are you going to avoid getting shaken down for something that you may have never heard? Shouldn't there be an easier way? Shouldn't there be a way that early on in that process for a judge or a jury or a judge or a lawyer to be able to have an early evidentiary hearing to say, maybe melodies are math, which are facts, which are not copyrightable. Or maybe there's no evidence showing that this person, later person, has heard the earlier person's song. Maybe the idea of subconscious infringement goes away. Now, if you are a songwriter, you should really care about this, because each day you are walking in a minefield that you didn't even know was there. You're trying to avoid every song, whether you've heard that song or not. And Noah and I, we're trying to preserve those open spaces so that you can be able to make the music in the public domain in a way that you've always thought it. The
Nice.
question is not, have I made this new song or not? Because no song is new. Noah and I have exhausted the data set. The real question is my song a green song or is my song a red song? Or perhaps the real question is, should you have the blank page that everybody thinks is there in the first place? If you're a judge or a lawyer, think about having an early evidentiary hearing to be able to take the evidentiary burden from the defendant to prove negative that they've never heard that song and bring it back to the plaintiff where it belongs, that they have to prove that the other side heard the song, and they have to prove that that melody is more than just a fact. And if you are a song lover, you should really care about this because the current state has a chilling effect on songwriters. Something that I haven't told you is that George Harrison, after the trial, he stopped writing music for a while. He told Rolling Stone that, after the trial, it's hard to start writing again because every song I hear sounds like something else. There's a reason for that, George. It's because there are only so many notes. There are only so many melodies, and the open spaces are running out exponentially. Now, ironically, Noah and I have made all the melodies and put them into the public domain in an effort to try to give songwriters more freedom and more to be able to make more and more music and less fear of accidentally stepping on musical landmines. Noah and I have made all the music to be able to allow future songwriters to make all of their music. Thank you.
Super cool. Super cool. We need more activism like this out in the world. Now, he also, where's all the music? Did I open that? No, I did. Let's go ahead and open this and take a look at it. And they also open source the code as well, which is huge. This is such a great movement that they started here. And this is the TED Talk there. Get the melodies. So it's XML, SQL, XML, so a whole bunch of XML. Okay, so we can't actually listen to it. All right, yeah, so they probably, do they have the audio? Oh, wait, no, hold on. Okay, this is on GitHub. Okay, Get the Melodies is on Archive. Interesting. For all the music data sets. Interesting. All right, so 600, here we go. 600 gigs. Here we go. 600 gigs for both of these. Okay. That is a lot. 1.2 terabytes. All right, so we can't listen to it, it looks like. But there you go. All right.
At the dawn.
We have watched this one before, but let's watch this one again. It's quiet. So let's check out this video. And this is by Our Climate Change. And this is from August of this year.
Of the 16th century, the Earth was cooling down. This period of global cooling was most likely caused by volcanic eruptions, shifts in oceanic currents, and orbital fluctuation. European rivers froze, and famines struck all over Asia. But in the 1600s, global temperatures dropped even further. And this time, it was caused by humans. Specifically, it was driven by the settler colonial violence that tore through the lives of millions of people indigenous to what we now call North America. The Great Dying, a genocide that killed 90% of the estimated 60.5 million indigenous peoples on the continent. The land-grabbing pursuits of American colonists killed 56 million people, with numbers possibly even higher. This genocide was so massive that it led to a decrease of global atmospheric carbon levels by 3.5 parts per million, enough to lower temperatures across the world. But this is just the start of the United States' role in changing the climate. The country has a long and dark legacy tied to climate change that continues to this day. This is the story of how the United States caused and is still causing climate change. This video was made possible by the people who support me on Patreon. Get early access to all my videos by becoming an OCC Patreon supporter. When it comes to emissions, the United States is the undisputed champ. America is the largest historical emitter. Its cumulative emissions are almost double that of China's, a fact which often gets lost in comparisons of the two countries' current emission rates. Yes, China is emitting more right now, but keep in mind that a lot of Chinese industrial pollution is driven by demand from the United States. There are also 4 times as many people using energy in China than in the United States. And because CO2 lingers in the atmosphere for up to 200 years, cumulative emissions are a much more effective tool to understand who is driving climate change. And it's undeniably the United States. Not only did the US nurture the oil industry into existence with tax credits, technological advancements, and ravenous capitalist consumption, but it's done so again with the natural gas industry in the early 2000s, helping to lock in a new form of fossil fuels for decades to come with extensive pipeline construction and government subsidies. In part, this was to quench America's insatiable thirst for fossil fuels and material goods. The US has one of the highest CO2 emissions rates per capita in the world, a rate that is almost 3 times the global average. And the United States is the biggest producer and consumer of natural gas and oil, as well as home to the second largest fleet of coal factories. In short, the United States is responsible for an overwhelming share of cumulative emissions and is still sheltering fossil fuel industries that are at the root of the climate crisis. Yes, the United States has now committed to a 50 to 52% reduction of carbon emissions by 2030, which is certainly ambitious. But according to Climate Action Tracker, this reduction still falls almost 11 percentage points short of the emissions cuts needed to stay below 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming. US electricity consumption and overall emissions levels are dropping, but slowly. It's also the second biggest country in terms of renewable capacity, and infrastructure for clean energy does seem to be growing. But again, it's still too slow. Considering the 40+ years of relative inaction since expert climate scientists warned of the threat of global warming, it's hard to imagine the United States cutting their emissions in half over the next 9 years. Politicians like Democrat Joe Manchin, who are firmly in the pocket of big oil companies.
Joe Manchin, I talk to his office every week. He is the kingmaker.
And the 130 members of Congress who deny or doubt that the climate crisis even exists continue to resist any of the actions necessary to reverse course, especially any climate action that might hinder a giant corporation's ability to make money by exploiting workers and natural resources. In short, before it even reaches its tentacles across the world, the American empire is responsible for far more than its fair share of emissions. And, like its refusal to recognize its violent exploitation abroad, as we'll see shortly, the ruling class of the United States refuses to recognize the harm caused by our use of fossil fuels as long as burning them is quote-unquote good for the economy. As in, good for shareholders and executives at major fossil fuel corporations. In order to fuel its excessive capitalist need to produce and accumulate goods, the United States has built an empire. One that stretches across the world in the form of nearly 800 military bases in 80 countries. Every year, the federal government sets aside nearly half of its discretionary budget, some $778 billion in 2020, for military spending. Some in the US view this gargantuan fighting force as a spreader of democracy and as the world's police force. And in a way, they're right. The US military does act as the police force of the world. Because, like the police, the US military ruthlessly safeguards the interests of capitalist multinationals and the state at the expense of the poor and people of color. This is best exemplified in the slew of coups, wars, and military interventions that have carved out American control of foreign oil fields. From the US-backed Iranian coup to the Carter Doctrine in the 1980s that explicitly committed the United States to defend the oil fields of the Persian Gulf against external threats, to the Gulf War, to the Iraq War, and to the two failed Venezuelan coups trying to topple presidents nationalizing oil reserves, the list goes on. Not only do these imperialist attacks secure and subsidize the future of oil use in a time when we need to be doing the exact opposite, but they also destabilize regions so that they're even more vulnerable to the catastrophes made more extreme by the climate crisis. Iraq has been experiencing this reality firsthand. After almost 40 years of US-fueled conflicts, the people and landscapes of Iraq are bruised. Wetlands along the Tigris and Euphrates were purposefully drained in the 1990s as a method of retaliation against communities reliant on their biodiverse ecosystems. So by 2001, 90% of Iraqi marshlands disappeared. And provisional governments that have failed to provide robust support to the Iraqi people, decimated infrastructure, and schools have all made recovering from a multi-decade war much harder. And the climate crisis has just made that recovery even harder. Increased heat in Iraq means increased dust storms and less arable lands. In FAO, arable land has decreased from 7.5 square kilometers to 3.7 square kilometers, while in Tikar it has dropped from 100 square kilometers to just 12.5 square kilometers, which means that Iraqi farmers who've tended to the land for generations are now being forced to find some other means of subsistence.
الجفاف عم هذه المناطق يعني بمسافات كبيرة جدا، لذلك تشوف حتى أنه صارت هجرة من الريف إلى المدينة، تناقص أعداد المزارعين.
In short, adapting to climate chaos is already difficult for those on the front lines. But the US has made it even harder by selfishly scorching the region in fire and fury to protect their oil interests. So, in a cruel twist of the knife, the US not only makes adapting to climate change more difficult in the regions they exploit, but they're the very ones fueling the fires of the climate crisis. Indeed, the Department of Defense is the single largest consumer of oil in the world. It has a bigger footprint than 140 countries. But military violence isn't the only tool the United States has used in its efforts to control global markets. Alongside the United States' military exploits, US-backed sanctions are wreaking havoc across the globe. War and sanctions are the one-two punch of US imperialism. Together, they work to bully any dissident or leftist governments from straying far from the United States' neoliberal agenda of material and labor exploitation of the global South to fuel the luxuries of the global North. US-backed economic sanctions impact nearly 1/3 of humanity in some 30 countries, and essentially work to starve countries into submission. In a world now experiencing an increasing number of crises, this is unethical and unjust. Guns and missiles might not be present, but sanctions still kill. In Cuba, COVID-19 has been exacerbated by the tightening of economic sanctions under the Trump regime. While in Yemen, under a US-backed Saudi blockade, over 20 million people are suffering from food insecurity, with 50,000 children dying of starvation in 2017. This, in a country expected to experience more climate change-driven droughts and heat waves. To compound the harm, the US is reluctant to shelter refugees or migrants. So while the US continues to pour carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and heat up the planet, it's simultaneously tearing away the ability of countries on the front lines of climate chaos to deal with catastrophes. And then it's closing its eyes to the consequences. In order to truly face the climate crisis, then, we must forge an anti-imperialist agenda.
Preach.
At the 2009 Conference of Parties in Copenhagen, otherwise known as COP15, the world was on the brink of a preliminary form of climate agreement when Bolivia, Venezuela, Tuvalu, Sudan, and a few other countries refused to sign on. Their reason? Imperialist powers like the US and the European Union rejected the notion that they should own up to their climate debt, a term
I talk about this a little bit. This whole video is amazing. I talk about a lot of the stuff in my stream in general, but also the United States and of course Europe does need to start throwing trillions of dollars towards all of these countries that they have destroyed and raped and exploited for hundreds of years, basically trillions of dollars in reparations, so that these, these countries in Central and South America and Africa and Orange Andre, how you doing, man? And in the Middle East, and we need to send them trillions of dollars to get their infrastructure back up. I mean, we've been destroying them for forever, and they don't have the ability to start working against climate change or getting education or food or healthcare for their people, because we've been stealing all of their money and resources and destroying their infrastructure. Just looking, okay, cool. Good to see you. How you doing? Hi. Yeah, it's such an amazing video. And a lot of what they're talking about here is the same stuff I talk in my stream, and it's also addressed in my policies. Great video.
Term that calls for reparations for the hundreds of years of emissions and colonial violence doled out by the global north onto the global south. Despite backlash, Bolivia and its comrades were right. Any effective climate agenda must incorporate the repair that comes with paying off the climate debt. The US not only must end its imperialist interventions, but do the opposite and aid countries in no strings attached funding of renewable.
This is exactly what my policies say. I'm just gonna go over here really quick. So like right here, education's first, electoral reform, and then U.S. machine for war and terrorism. Cutting our military budget by 75%, and then using that money to work on environment and sustainability here, but also globally as well. It's exactly right.
Renewable and technological revolutions led by the global south as a means to escape reliance on fossil fuels. But repairing the harm of centuries of American imperialism doesn't stop there. It also means significant demilitarization of the US war machine while simultaneously sheltering the growing population of refugees fleeing the climate crisis.
Yes, that's what my policies say. In any country that the United States has fucked with in one way or another, we need to automatically accept refugees from those countries. Full stop. That is a price for doing war.
Ultimately, the United States has been at the front lines of digging the world into a deep hole of climate chaos. So, in order to repair the damage it's done, the US not only needs to stop digging, but turn its resources towards building a ladder so that we might all escape the worst of climate catastrophe. Unfortunately, videos like these, while very important, do terribly with the YouTube algorithm, and sponsors.
All right, there you go. Amazing video. That's covers all the stuff that I talk about in my stream. It's great video. I will be sharing this to my, I don't know if this is in my, let me check and see if this is in my policies. If it's not in my policies, I'm going to throw it in there because it's that, oops, no, come back here. It's that important. This is really gets down to it. Amazing. Yep, I do have it in here. Okay. May have to add some more comments to this. It is such an amazing video. All right. All right, any questions, comments, suggestions? Great video. I wonder if I have this in Discord too. I have to, because this is just it's too right on the money. I do not, so I'll put this in, oops, in Discord as well. Let's see what else. All right, I think that's all we're going to do for today. About 5 minutes left. You guys have any last minute comments? We can do that, and then I will move on. I've got to get these links out to my Reddit stream, get some put to Discord, some put to my policy page and policy Facebook and all that sort of stuff going on. Yeah, anything. Hope everyone's having a good week. Mine's going okay-ish. Got new glasses, which is cool. Still adjusting to how they work. They're not perfect. My left eye is a little more, not quite as focused, but better than it was. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for gifting me with your time. I stream on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Central, Thursdays at 5 p.m. Central, and Saturday at 3 p.m. Central as well. So, on Twitch, also in my About thing, you've got my blog and Patreon and donation areas where you can go if you like to support me, and links to my blog and all that sort of stuff there too. On the Prime Case stream, I've been on there once. It's been over a month or two. I do need to get back on there. I'd like to. Yeah, who else is? Someone else has said that as well. I want to see if they're going to do one on climate change, because it went okay. I was really nervous. Really nervous. I spoke 2 or 3 times, but that is about it, because there's a lot of really smart people on there. It was me and someone else. Yeah. Probably Girly Bear. You and Girly Bear. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah, so I do need to get on there again. I just have to get over my my shyness and get on another panel. Yeah, once I get over my nervousness for the panel, I'll come off a little bit better. But it's about getting over that shyness and getting onto a topic I'm really passionate about, which would be climate change, because that's what I cover 3 things here: climate change, capitalism, and coronavirus. Embrace your flyness. That's some very good advice. Very good advice. I definitely need to embrace my flyness, especially with my new fly glasses. Right. My wife thought my previous glasses were no. That's cool. That's cool. My wife thought my previous glasses looked too fascist-like. She's from Belarus, and now when we went to get new glasses for me, she said these were okay, but now she says these are a little too fascist for her too. So, can't win. But yeah, good idea. I do need to get a hold of, I can't remember what her name is, but I have her in Discord, and see if they have another panel on climate change or something like that. I do need to get out more. Definitely. Because this is such an amazing video. Yeah, all right. Anything else? Brace my flyness. All right, man. Orange Andre, thank you so much, dude. I appreciate your time. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys maybe on Saturday or next week. Stay safe.
Just me and you, let's make up all the rules. Count to 10 and watch the stars turn blue. Watch the stars.